Ba 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 ra ba ba ra ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ra ba ba ra ba 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 ba. Salutations and welcome. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and welcome to Amalfi Sports. And in this episode of Amalfi Sports, I'm going to give you an overview of the races that I will be previewing and picking throughout a very busy summer and fall schedule for horse racing. I again appreciate all of the support from the Belmont preview and the recap as well. We have a lot of excitement around the horse racing calendar this year, and I'm just thrilled that you're going to follow me through this fall and summer season. Should be very exciting. We're going to go and cover racing from coast to coast and have new episodes nearly every week. Now, for those of you who may have watched my Derby, Preakness, and Belmont previews, the episodes moving forward are probably not going to be that long. They're going to be a little bit shorter, more focused on handicapping, more focused on just a couple of races for those big days for graded stakes. But should be a lot of fun. I'll try to give you the background on the main horses and the horses that should be major contenders, some things to keep in mind, etc. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is moving forward, you'll also be able to enjoy these sorts of previews and pick episodes in podcast form. So if you don't want to look at my little hat and my Kentucky Derby picture in the background, you don't have to. You can listen to me on podcasts while you're on your way to work or perhaps on your way to the track. And more information about that podcast will be coming soon on future episodes. So just make sure to listen. And when that's ready, subscribe to that as well. But for now, the best way for you to get all of your handicapping and picks is to press that subscribe button and follow Amalfi Media on YouTube as we cover the best graded stakes races throughout the country. And we really are going coast to coast and maybe even a little international with some of our picks, as you'll see here in a little bit. Now, listen, it is hard to keep up with all of the races that are going on this summer. We just had a great weekend with the Stephen F. Foster this past weekend at Churchill Downs, the Debutante, and we had great races that weekend. So there's something going on every single weekend. It's hard to keep up with all of them at all of the different tracks, etc. So listen, let me do the heavy lifting. Let me look at the racing forms. Let me kind of break everything down, and then I will give you my winners, my long shots, and my advice. So hopefully that you can win, place, and show throughout the summer. Now, let's get into the horse racing calendar here a little bit. And one of the things I wanted to say was most of the graded stakes races that I'll be covering and making picks for will be over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. A few of them are on Mondays and Tuesdays, but most are on Friday, Saturday, Sundays. Therefore, I will be posting on Wednesdays prior to the race. So this way you have plenty of time to listen, consider my advice. Is it worth taking? Is it worth not taking? Is it worth betting against me or betting with me and making that wager in time? So it should give you plenty of time for the whole horse racing calendar. And we'll always try to give you at least a few days heads up on all of these races as we go through a very busy summer and fall schedule. So let's take a look at the July racing calendar. And we are going to start right where we left off, actually at Belmont and the Belmont Oaks and Belmont Derby, which is coming up Saturday, July 10th. Again, we'll have those videos for you the Wednesday before those races. And Belmont Derby, Belmont Oaks, both grade 1 races, both on turf, both for 3-year-olds. The Oaks, of course, is for the fillies. So it should be a great way to conclude a wonderful season at Belmont. So the following week, we have a really busy schedule as we go from Belmont to both Monmouth Park and Saratoga. And it's important to point out that there'll be a couple of times like this where there are big races at 2 different tracks on the same day. And what happens in those cases is I'll record 2 separate videos. So sometimes people are just interested in what's going on at Monmouth. Some people are just interested in what's going on at Saratoga or that individual track that might be doubled up with another one on that day. And so you can just watch those videos. So we'll have one video for the races at Monmouth, which of course is highlighted by the Haskell, the grade 1 dirt race for 3-year-olds. But also a couple of good grade 3 races underneath that, the Monmouth Cup Stakes, which is also a dirt race for 3 and up, and the Molly Pitcher Stakes, which is for fillies and mares 3 and up as well. So full racing day at Monmouth. We'll be previewing and picking all of those races. Now, Just up the road in Saratoga, we'll start the Saratoga season, which is one of the great venues in all of horse racing. And we'll start with the Diana and the Grade 1 turf race for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. So these are some names that you might be a little bit more familiar with. If you follow horse racing, you might have seen them as 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, now racing as 4-year-olds. On the other end of the spectrum, you also have the Sanford Stakes, which is a Grade 3 dirt race for 2-year-olds. And that's a great opportunity to see who's the up-and-coming crop of 2-year-olds. So these are names that you might not know much about, just as if you watched the races at Churchill this past weekend, you saw the debutante, again, a lot of 2-year-olds racing for there. So a lot of new names entering the horse racing lexicon. Now, I said we were going to go coast to coast. Well, we're actually also going to go overseas. One of my favorite things to do is to wake up early in the morning and watch horse racing over in the United Kingdom. And so we're going to go over to the Ascot racetrack, and we're going to cover 2 races over there on Saturday, July 24th. And they are, of course, the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes, as well as the Princess Margaret Keeneland Stakes. The King George the 6th and Queen Elizabeth is a Grade 1, and Princess Margaret is a Grade 3. They are both turf races. That is overwhelmingly how they race over in Europe. The Queen Elizabeth is for 3 and up, whereas the Princess Margaret is for fillies who are 2 years old. So this is a lot of fun. If you've never watched horse racing over in the United Kingdom, I encourage you, wake up early, have your breakfast, and watch a little horse racing. It's a different atmosphere. They don't race in an oval traditionally. They typically just race in a straight line. So it's a very different type of spectator sport over there. I was very fortunate enough to go over and see some races at Windsor several years ago. It's a lot of fun, but it's a very different vibe and a very different atmosphere than horse racing here in the United States. But it's a lot of fun. And it's also fun to watch the Brits cover the royal family showing up for big day of the races. And the Queen, of course, is a huge horse person, loves her horses, and usually tries to model her outfit after the silks being worn for the jockey that is riding her horse. She has several competitive horses. So should be a lot of fun. And so we'll preview the Ascot races on that Saturday, July 24th. Well, the following week, we go out to the West Coast and we go to where the surf meets the turf, and we go out to Del Mar and we hit up the Grade 1 Bing Crosby Stakes as well as the Grade 1 Clement Hirsch Stakes. Both are dirt races. The Bing is for 3 and up, whereas the Clement Hirsch is for fillies and mares who are 3 and up. So should be a great season of racing out at Del Mar. We got a lot of Del Mar that we're going to be covering. Should be a lot of fun. That same weekend, I'll also be making a separate video for a bunch of really strong races at Saratoga, highlighted by the Alfred Vanderbilt Handicap Grade 1 dirt race for 3 and up, but also a couple of good Grade 2 races, the Jim Dandy, which is a dirt race for 3-year-olds, as well as the Bowling Green, which is a turf race for 4-year-olds and up. So that concludes our July calendar, and there's a lot going on there. But if you thought July was busy, oh my goodness, is August jam-packed. And we're going to, again, really be ping-ponging back and forth between Del Mar and Saratoga. And one of the things that's interesting about these regional tracks, when you go and have a season at Del Mar or a season at Saratoga, is you will sometimes notice that jockeys start getting hot. And you'll also see trainers start getting hot. People have very good seasons at certain tracks. And sometimes that is obvious from the beginning. Sometimes that is only obvious as things are playing out. So one of the things that I'll be doing is paying close attention to who are the hot jockeys at each of these tracks, who are the trainers that are having the most success at these tracks, because that can really tell you a lot. I remember last year in particular, I mentioned this before in one of the other podcasts. Last year at Saratoga, it felt like Irad Ortiz Jr. won every single race. And that's just one of those where when you start getting a jockey that's winning at a 25, 28, 30, 35% clip, you just start throwing out the racing form to some extent. You start saying, just tell me which horse that jockey is on, because they're just on such a hot streak. So it'll be interesting as we follow this to see which jockeys are having the most success, which trainers are having the most success on the different services at the different tracks. So let's take a look at the August calendar. And when you'll notice that there's an August part one and an August part two because August is that jam packed. So we're going to, like I said, start at August out at Del Mar. We have the Sorrento Stakes, the Best Pal Stakes, and the Yellow Ribbon Handicap, all grade 2 races. The first 2 on dirt and the third for turf for fillies and mares. And I should point out the Sorrento and the Best Pal are for 2-year-olds. So great opportunity again to see that up and coming crop of horses that are going to be competing next year for the Triple Crown or perhaps the Kentucky Oaks, etc. Then we go to Saratoga that same weekend. Again, I'll have a separate video for this, but it's the Whitney. And I've been fortunate enough to actually be in Saratoga for the Whitney. It's a great atmosphere, wonderful race, but there's a lot of really good races. So there's 3 grade 1 races that day, highlighted, of course, by the Whitney Stakes, which is a dirt race for 4-year-olds and higher. But you also have the Longinus Test Stakes, which is dirt for fillies for 3-year-olds, and then the Saratoga Derby Invitational, which is a turf 3-year-old race, which is also grade 1. Probably going to throw in a prediction for the Glens Falls, which is a turf race for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. So full racing day at Saratoga. Now we're going to take a little bit of a break because I have a birthday in mid-August, so I got to have a little bit of time to celebrate for myself, but I'm also going to celebrate by continuing to follow a great horse racing season and going back out to Del Mar for Saturday, August 21st. Great day of races out there. You have the TVG Pacific Classic at the Del Mar Oaks, both grade 1. You then have 2 grade 2 races as well, the Del Mar Mile, as well as the Del Mar Handicap, and then a grade 3 race for the Torrey Pines Stakes. Again, most of these are for 3-year-olds or 3-year-olds and up. The Del Mar Oaks, the Del Mar Mile, and the Del Mar Handicap are all on turf. And of course, the Oaks and the Torrey Pines Stakes are for fillies, as well as the TVG Pacific Classic. So should be a great and very diverse day of racing out there at Del Mar. Now, that same weekend on the other side of the country, we have Saratoga, and they have the Alabama Stakes, which is a dirt race for fillies who are 3-year-olds. That's going to be a really strong race. A lot of talk about the potential entrance in that race. Should be really exciting. Then you also have the Lake Placid that day, which is a grade 3 turf race for fillies who are 3 years old. Now, we're not just going to ping pong back and forth between Del Mar and Saratoga. We're going to throw in some different tracks because I live in Northern Virginia, and there are 2 tracks that are actually pretty close to me. One of them is over in Charlestown, not Charleston, but Charlestown, West Virginia, which is about an hour or so outside of the DC suburbs. And so we're going to go there for Friday, August 27th, and have some picks for that race for the Charleston Town Classic, as well as the Charleston Town Oaks, and those are grade 2 and grade 3 races respectively, both on dirt, with the Oaks being for fillies. And then that same weekend, a little bit the next day, is perhaps the biggest day on the horse racing calendar outside of the Breeders' Cup, and it is simply the Travers. The Travers in Saratoga is quite a day. You have 6, count them 6, grade 1 races, highlighted, of course, by the Travers, the Sword Dancer, Personal Ensign, H. Allen Jerkins Memorial, Forgo, and the Ballerina Handicap, all grade 1 races. The Travers is for dirt, but then you also look at the Sword Dancers on turf. The rest of the races are all on dirt, and great opportunity to see a solid crop of either 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds and up. So should be a wonderful, wonderful day. Well, we might even have a special guest or two for that particular episode. Hope to have some trainers on potentially, some jockeys, as well as some other handicappers to give their point of view on some of this information. As I mentioned, we'll stay local here in Virginia, and we're going to pop down to Colonial Downs for the Virginia Derby Grade 3 turf race for 3-year-olds, as well as the Old Nelson Stakes, which is also a turf race for 3 and up. And so should be a lot of fun. Colonial Downs is much like probably your local racetrack, a lot of claiming races, a few stakes races, pretty low purses typically. But for the end of their season, they really celebrate by going all out and having the Virginia Derby, which if you talk to people down here is better than the Kentucky Derby. So should be a lot of fun. And we might even be able to get over to Colonial Downs, do maybe a live podcast from there on the day of the race. That would be a lot of fun. So now, that's August, and that's an exhausting July and August schedule. There's so many races on both coasts. Really interesting to see how that all plays out. Then you get into the fall, and there are really two big weekends in the fall: the first weekend in September and the first weekend in October. Now, there are other races, and depending on how we're doing in September and October, I might be covering those. Some good races at Arlington Park, for instance. They start coming back to Belmont a little bit later in the season as well. So should be interesting to see how it all plays out. And like I said, it might have a couple more, but definitely covering the two really big weekends, like I said, at the beginning of September and the beginning of October. And of course, we'll kick it off with a huge racing weekend on Saturday, Sunday, Monday out at Del Mar, with the Del Mar Derby, the John C. Mabie, both Grade 2 turf races. The Mabie is, of course, for fillies and mares. Then you have, on Sunday, some great 2-year-old races, the Del Mar Debutante, as well as the Del Mar Juvenile Fillies Turf. The Debutante is a Grade 1 race on dirt for fillies who are 2 years old. The following day, on Monday, you have the Del Mar Juvenile Turf for 2-year-olds, as well as the Run Happy Del Mar Futurity Grade 1 dirt race for 2-year-olds. And so this is, again, another opportunity to see that next crop of potential Triple Crown threats for next year as they make a run for the Roses at the Kentucky Derby, then the Preakness, then the Belmont. Now, on the other side of the country, simultaneously, on Monday, September 6th, we'll also be covering what's going on at Saratoga, which is, of course, the Hopeful Stakes, which is a Grade 1 dirt race for 2-year-olds. And the Hopeful is one of those races, much like the Del Mar Futurity, can really be a great predictor for who's going to win the Triple Crown. This is the race in which Secretariat made just an astounding move as a 2-year-old and really put everyone on notice that he was going to be a very special horse, of course, perhaps the most special horse in the history of horse racing. So it's also a great opportunity to see the West Coast horses versus the East Coast horses. It'll be fascinating to see who's got the better horses, how are they running, comparing splits, looking at their records, etc. So that should be a lot of fun. And of course, the same day as the Hopeful is the Grade 2 Bernard Baruch Handicap, which is a turf for 3-year-olds and up. And then I said we'll also go to that first weekend in October, and we're going to Santa Anita, one of the most beautiful racetracks there is. Certainly a racetrack that's had a little bit of controversy over the last several years because of the health of some of the horses out there. And so that's something certainly to keep in mind as we look at the Santa Anita racing schedule. But they do have a slew of great races for that Friday and Saturday, October 1st and 2nd. And of course, you have the American Pharos Stakes, which again is a great predictor for probably a lot of the horses that ran in the Del Mar Futurity are going to be running in that American Pharos Stakes a month later, dirt race for 2-year-olds. And you also have the Chandelier Stakes, Grade 2 race for fillies who are 2 years old. So it should be a lot of fun to watch those. The Eddie D Stakes, a turf race. The Rodeo Drive Stakes, also a turf race. And then the Awesome Again is a Grade 1 dirt for 3 and up. So full day of racing both Saturday and Friday, October 1st and 2nd out at Santa Anita. So that is your fall schedule. Now, again, we might come with a couple of previews for races taking place maybe at Arlington Park, maybe back at Belmont, etc. But by and large, those are really the big graded stakes races that you need to be paying attention to. And of course, all of this is leading up to the Breeders' Cup, which is the biggest event in horse racing. It really is outside of I think it's even bigger than the Triple Crown because it is just jam-packed with Grade 1 races the entire weekend. So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering in November as we go to the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar. And it is a full slate of 9 Grade 1 races over that weekend. Basically, on Friday, you have the juveniles, you have the 2-year-olds, and then on Saturday, you have the 3 and up. And so on that Friday, you have the fillies on turf, you also have the fillies on dirt, and then you have the juvenile and the juvenile turf. Again, all for 2-year-olds, should be a lot of fun. Over in England, they like to say, remember, the 5th of November. But when I think of the 5th of November this year, I'm not thinking of the gunpowder treason and plot. And Guy Fawkes. I'm thinking about the Breeders' Cup. Starts on November 5th, so make sure to set your calendars to that. The next day, Saturday, November 6th, of course, 5 Grade 1 races, the Dirt Mile, the Filly and Mare Turf, the Breeders' Cup Mile, the Breeders' Cup Turf, and of course, the creme de la creme, the crown jewel, the Breeders' Cup. All Grade 1 races. The Breeders' Cup Mile and the Breeders' Cup Turf, of course, both on turf. All of these races are for 3 and up. And then, of course, the Filly and Mare Turf is exclusively, of course, for fillies and mares. So that is the horse racing calendar that we have. And it is jam-packed. And I'm just thrilled to be covering all of these, making my picks, giving you some long shots, giving you some advice, keeping my ear to the ground in terms of what I'm hearing regarding really hot jockeys, really hot trainers at some of these different tracks throughout the summer and fall, because that can be the difference between cashing in that win ticket and having to throw it in the trash can on the way out of the track. So hopefully I can give you some pretty good advice as we go through a wonderful season. So as I said, I'm excited to cover a jam-packed horse racing summer and fall. And remember, folks, the best way to get this inside information for all of these races is to subscribe to Amalfi Media and be on the lookout on Wednesdays for my videos to drop so you can have the inside track at the betting window. Until next time, friends, I'm Matthew DeSantis, and it's now post time.